It begins not with a bang, but with a quiet tension. In the narrow waters of the Persian Gulf, a vital artery for the world's energy, ships move with a new and nervous caution. Through this strait, a significant portion of the planet's oil flows. Its stability is something we have long taken for granted. Yet, as we speak on this day, March 3rd, 2026, the situation is becoming increasingly fragile. Drones with unknown insignia have been reported near oil tankers. Naval patrols from several nations have increased their presence, their grey hulls slicing through the turquoise water with a grim purpose. These are not just distant news headlines. They are the first tremors of a potential earthquake that could shake the foundations of our daily lives. For most of us, this drama feels a world away. Our attention is on our work, our families, the rising cost of groceries. The idea that a geopolitical standoff thousands of miles away could directly impact our homes seems abstract, even unlikely. However, the modern world is a deeply interconnected system. The fuel in our cars, the plastic in our electronics, and the electricity that powers our homes are all linked to this single, vulnerable waterway. Understanding this connection is the first step toward understanding our own exposure. The world is not as large and disconnected as it once seemed. What happens in the Strait of Hormuz does not stay in the Strait of Hormuz. This essay is not designed to create fear. Instead, it aims to provide clarity and a sense of calm preparedness. We will explore what it truly means when a global crisis unfolds in the 21st century. We will look at how such an event, starting quietly, can rapidly change everything in the first 72 hours. From the price you pay at the petrol station to the reliability of your internet connection, the effects can be swift and widespread. The goal is to equip you not with fear, but with knowledge, the most powerful tool for navigating uncertainty. We will journey through the practical steps an ordinary person can take to ensure their safety and well-being. The stakes are higher now than they have been in decades. The delicate balance of power is shifting. Nations are testing their boundaries, and old alliances are being strained. The Persian Gulf crisis is not happening in a vacuum. It is a symptom of a broader global realignment. For the everyday civilian, this is the moment to pay attention. It is the time to listen past the noise of daily life and hear the faint but growing hum of instability. By understanding the nature of the threat and how it unfolds, we can transform anxiety into action. We can become resilient, not reactive. This is your guide to what comes next. Great and terrible events rarely announce their arrival with a trumpet blast. More often they begin as a whisper, a footnote in a newspaper, or a brief report on the evening news that is quickly forgotten. Consider the summer of 1914. People across Europe were enjoying a period of unprecedented peace and prosperity. The talk was of holidays, new technologies like the telephone, and artistic movements. The assassination of an archduke in a city called Sarajevo seemed a distant, regional affair. Few could imagine that this single act would ignite a global conflict, drawing millions into the trenches of the First World War and reshaping the world map forever. This pattern repeats itself throughout history. The slow, creeping rise of tensions is often dismissed until the moment of crisis is unavoidable. In the late 1930s, reports of political manoeuvres in Central Europe were just news from afar for many in Britain and America. Life continued. The concerns were local: jobs, the economy, the weather. It was only when the machinery of war was fully in motion that the public realized the world had irrevocably changed. The quiet accumulation of aggressive acts, broken treaties, and political gambles had built a pressure so immense that it had to find a violent release. The start of a major conflict is never a single moment, but the final step in a long, quiet march. We see this in our own time too. The financial crisis of 2008 did not begin on the day the banks failed. It started years earlier in complex financial instruments and overlooked regulatory filings. For the average person, these were invisible forces. The warning signs were present, but they were written in a language few understood. The crisis only became real when it hit our bank accounts, our mortgages, and our jobs. The lesson is clear. The most significant shifts often begin in the background, in the complex machinery that runs our world, long before they disrupt our immediate reality. We are conditioned to react to loud noises, but the true danger often moves in silence. And so, as we watch the events in the Persian Gulf in 2026, we must remember this lesson. The temptation is to see it as just another geopolitical squabble, a recurring headline that will eventually fade. But history teaches us to be cautious. It shows us that the quietest moments can be the most pivotal. The subtle movements of naval fleets, the carefully worded diplomatic statements, and the unattributed cyber probes are the modern equivalents of that gunshot in Sarajevo. They are the whispers before the roar. Recognizing them for what they are is not alarmism, it is wisdom. It is the first crucial step in preparing for a future that may arrive sooner than we think. The crisis begins. It is confirmed. A major shipping lane in the Persian Gulf has been blocked. Perhaps it was a naval mine, a coordinated attack on several tankers, or a declared military exclusion zone. The specific cause matters less than the immediate effect. The flow of oil is choked. Within hours, the first and most visible impact arrives at the petrol station. The price of fuel, which was already a topic of conversation, does not just rise, it leaps. The numbers on the signs change almost by the hour, climbing dramatically as global markets react in panic. This is the first shockwave, a tangible and immediate consequence that affects everyone who drives a car. This initial price shock triggers the first wave of public reaction. Panic buying. Seeing the escalating prices, people rush to fill their tanks, fearing that fuel will become even more expensive or, worse, unavailable. Long queues snake from petrol stations, spilling out onto main roads and causing traffic jams. Tempers flare. The simple act of fueling a vehicle becomes a stressful competitive ordeal. But the panic does not stop with petrol. The realization dawns that the cost of transporting goods will also skyrocket. People begin to worry about food shortages, and a second wave of panic buying hits the supermarkets. Shelves of essential items, canned goods, rice, pasta, toilet paper begin to empty. Simultaneously, a less visible but more insidious event may be unfolding. As nations posture and global tensions escalate, the digital realm becomes a battleground. Cyber attacks, subtle at first, begin to target critical infrastructure. Your power might flicker. Your internet connection may become slow and unreliable. Perhaps a major banking network goes offline for a few hours, attributed to technical difficulties. These are not random accidents. They are deliberate, targeted probes designed to test defenses, create confusion, and sow chaos. The goal is to destabilize society from within, making people feel insecure and vulnerable in their own homes. The stability of the power grid, something we rely on absolutely, is suddenly uncertain. By the end of the first 24 hours, the world feels markedly different. The abstract threat from the news has become a concrete reality. The cost of living has jumped overnight. Basic logistics are disrupted. The reliability of essential services we have always trusted is now in question. The atmosphere is thick with anxiety and uncertainty. Conversations are dominated by the crisis, with people sharing rumours and fears. The sense of normalcy has been fractured. This initial shock is a powerful psychological blow. It demonstrates just how quickly the complex interconnected systems that support our modern lives can be thrown into disarray by a single distant event. As we enter the second day of the crisis, a new and bewildering challenge emerges. The battle for information begins in earnest. Our screens, normally a source of news and connection, become a confusing whirlwind of conflicting reports, rumours, and deliberate misinformation. Official news channels struggle to keep up, often providing cautious, heavily vetted statements that lag behind the fast-moving events. They report on diplomatic talks and military movements, but the information feels incomplete. There is a vacuum, and into this vacuum floods a torrent of content from social media, messaging apps, and anonymous online forums. The digital fog of war descends upon us. On platforms like X, TikTok, and Facebook, videos and images spread like wildfire. Some show dramatic explosions, others show panicked crowds or military hardware on the move. But their authenticity is almost impossible to verify. A video of a missile strike could be from this conflict, from a previous war, or even from a video game. Sophisticated deepfake technology can create realistic but entirely false videos of world leaders making inflammatory statements. AI-powered bot accounts work tirelessly, amplifying certain narratives, sowing division, and spreading panic. The goal of this information warfare is not just to push one side's agenda, but to destroy our ability to discern the truth altogether. This creates a profound sense of psychological distress. Whom do you trust? Your government may release a statement only for a flood of online evidence to immediately contradict it. A trusted news source might retract a story after realizing it was based on a manipulated video. Friends and family share alarming posts on WhatsApp, each one adding to the growing sense of dread and confusion. The constant barrage of information is exhausting. It becomes difficult to know what is real, what is exaggerated, and what is a complete fabrication. This uncertainty is a weapon. It paralyzes our ability to make rational decisions, leaving us feeling helpless and isolated. By the end of day 2, many people will either retreat from the news completely, overwhelmed by the chaos, or become addicted to it, endlessly scrolling in a desperate search for clarity that never comes. The shared reality we once relied upon begins to splinter. Neighbours might believe entirely different versions of events based on the online bubbles they inhabit. This erosion of trust in the media, in the government, and even in each other is one of the most significant and damaging aspects of modern conflict. It turns a society's information ecosystem into a weapon against itself, creating fractures and fear long before a single shot is fired nearby. On the third day, the initial shock and digital confusion begin to harden into a new, unsettling reality. The immediate disruptions are no longer surprising. They are the new normal. Petrol prices remain high, and some stations may now be closed, their pumps empty. Supermarket shelves, stripped of staples in the first wave of panic, have not been fully restocked. Supply chains, already strained, are now visibly breaking down. The absence of everyday items, bread, milk, certain medicines, serves as a constant physical reminder that the world is not functioning as it should. The problem is no longer just about price. It is about availability. This scarcity drives a second, more calculated phase of public reaction. The frantic panic buying of the first day gives way to a grim, determined scramble for resources. People begin to think more strategically. They seek out smaller independent shops that might still have stock. They start to look for alternatives. If there's no bread, maybe they can buy flour. If the power grid seems unstable, they search for candles, batteries and power banks. The focus shifts from immediate wants to fundamental needs. The question, what if, becomes the dominant thought. What if the power is out for days? What if the water stops running? What if the banks close? In response to this growing public anxiety and the very real logistical challenges, authorities will likely begin to take visible action. You may see official announcements about rationing certain goods, such as petrol. There might be public service announcements advising citizens to conserve water and electricity. Police, or even military personnel, may be deployed to guard critical infrastructure like power stations, reservoirs, and major distribution centres. While intended to reassure the public, the sight of uniformed guards around essential utilities can also have the opposite effect, heightening the sense of crisis and confirming that the threat is real and serious. By the end of 72 hours, the landscape of daily life has been fundamentally altered. A sense of fragility hangs over everything. The abstract geopolitical crisis has translated into a personal struggle for certainty and security. People are now actively trying to insulate themselves and their families from the cascading failures of the systems they once trusted. The conversations with neighbours change from "Did you hear the news?" to "Do you have any spare batteries?" The focus narrows dramatically to the immediate environment, the home, the street, the local community. The scramble for certainty has begun, and the need for practical personal preparedness becomes undeniable. In an age of complex high-tech threats, the most effective preparations are often, surprisingly simple and timeless. This is not about building a concrete bunker or stockpiling weapons. It's really about creating a small pocket of stability for you and your family. The first and most critical element is water. We tend to take clean, running water for granted, but it's entirely dependent on power and functioning municipal systems. A sustained cyber attack on the grid could shut it down. So, honestly, the simplest preparation is just to store it. Aim for at least 4 litres of water per person per day. A 2-week supply is a good goal. You can buy bottled water or simply fill clean, food-grade containers from your tap. Next, consider your basic supplies, focusing on what you would need if the shops were closed or empty for a week. This includes non-perishable food that requires no cooking or just minimal heating, such as canned fish, protein bars, dried fruit, and nuts. And please don't forget a manual can opener. Create a small first aid kit with bandages, antiseptic wipes, pain relievers, and any personal prescription medications you need. Try to have at least a 2-week supply. A battery-powered or hand-crank radio is invaluable. When the internet is unreliable and filled with misinformation, a simple AM/FM radio can provide access to official emergency broadcasts. And, of course, have flashlights or headlamps with extra batteries on hand. One of the most overlooked aspects of modern preparedness is the need for non-digital tools. Our reliance on digital payment systems is a major vulnerability. If power grids or banking networks are disrupted, your credit cards and mobile payment apps will be useless. Having a reasonable amount of cash on hand in small denominations can be crucial for buying essential goods in the early days of a crisis. Similarly, communication can fail. Having a pre-arranged meeting place for your family in case mobile networks go down is a simple but vital plan. Knowing basic contact information for loved ones written down on paper is also a wise precaution. Finally, the most powerful survival tool is not something you can buy. It's something you build. It is your community. In a crisis, the strength of your local network becomes paramount. Get to know your neighbours now. Learn who has what skills. One neighbour might be a nurse, another might be a plumber, and another might have a generator. A crisis is a shared experience, and communities that cooperate are far more resilient than individuals who isolate themselves. Simply knowing the people on your street, building a small foundation of trust and goodwill today, can make an enormous difference when you need to rely on each other tomorrow. Simple human connection is the ultimate form of preparedness. When we look back at historical sieges and prolonged crises, we find powerful lessons in resilience. During the siege of Sarajevo in the 1990s, the city was cut off from the outside world for nearly 4 years. Electricity, water and food supplies were severed. Yet people survived. Their survival did not depend on high-tech gadgets, but on ingenuity, adaptation and community. They collected rainwater from rooftops. They created makeshift stoves, called chorobnjak, that could burn anything from wood scraps to old books for cooking. They formed small, tight-knit groups, sharing resources, information and protection. The most valuable commodity was not money, but useful skills and trusted relationships. Similarly, during the Blitz in London in World War II, the city endured relentless bombing campaigns. While the government provided Anderson shelters and public underground stations for protection, the true spirit of survival was found in the social fabric. Neighbours looked out for each other. Air raid wardens, who were ordinary civilians, patrolled the streets during blackouts to enforce safety measures and guide people. The Women's Voluntary Service ran mobile canteens, providing tea and comfort to rescue workers and those who had lost their homes. This collective spirit, the famous Blitz spirit, was a psychological defence as important as any anti-aircraft gun. It showed that shared purpose and mutual support are critical to enduring a long-term crisis. These historical examples teach us a crucial lesson about what truly matters when systems fail. The focus of the survivors was always on the fundamentals. They worried about water first and foremost. They found creative ways to secure food and generate heat. They organized themselves into small functional units to solve problems collectively. The person who knew how to purify water or repair a broken tool was more valuable than the person with a fat bank account. The family that had built strong bonds with its neighbours was safer than the family that had locked itself away in isolation. The resilience was human scale, practical and community-based. Applying these lessons to our current situation in 2026, the message is clear. While our threats may be modern, cyber attacks and information warfare, the solutions are ancient. Our preparations should mirror the priorities of those who have endured hardship before us. We must secure our water. We must have a small store of basic food. We must cultivate practical skills. And above all, we must invest in our local communities. The stories from Sarajevo and London are not just tales of suffering. They are blueprints for survival. They remind us that when the grand structures of the world begin to shake, our foundation is built on the simple, powerful bonds we form with those around us. It can be difficult sometimes to see how the strategic decisions of distant governments connect to our daily lives. Yet the actions of nations like Iran and Russia on the global stage are like the moves of grandmasters in a complex chess match, and the consequences of those moves ripple across the entire board. Iran's strategy, for example, has long focused on asymmetric warfare. Lacking the conventional military might to challenge a superpower directly, it excels in using proxy forces, drone swarms, and naval mines to exert influence and disrupt key choke points, like the Strait of Hormuz. Its goal is to make the cost of any military intervention prohibitively high and to demonstrate its ability to inflict economic pain on a global scale. Russia, in turn, has perfected the art of hybrid warfare. This strategy blends conventional military pressure with a sophisticated mix of cyber attacks, information warfare, and economic leverage. We've seen this playbook used to destabilize its neighbors and undermine Western alliances. A key element is targeting an adversary's critical infrastructure, power grids, financial systems, and communication networks, to create chaos and erode public trust in government. By creating a crisis in the Persian Gulf, either directly or through allies, Russia can divert Western attention and resources, create divisions among allies, and benefit from the resulting surge in oil and gas prices, which boosts its own economy. These strategies are not independent, they're often complementary. An Iranian move to disrupt shipping in the Gulf creates the exact kind of instability and economic shock that benefits Russia's hybrid warfare goals. It puts pressure on the global oil supply, raising energy costs for Europe and the United States, which can lead to political discontent at home. This is why the current crisis is so dangerous. It's not just a regional dispute. It's a potential flashpoint where the strategic interests and asymmetric tactics of multiple global actors could converge, creating a perfect storm of economic, military, and cyber disruption that would be felt worldwide. Therefore, understanding this geopolitical context is not an academic exercise. It's a vital part of personal preparedness. When you hear news of a drone incident in the Gulf, you should think of Iran's strategy and the potential for supply chain disruption. When you read about unexplained glitches in a nation's power grid, you should consider the possibility of a Russian hybrid warfare probe. These moves are signals. They tell us what kind of disruptions these nations are capable of and willing to cause. For the ordinary person, this knowledge provides context for the chaos. It helps explain why the price of petrol is soaring and why the internet is suddenly unreliable. It connects the dots between the grand chessboard and your front door. If you found this video helpful, don't miss out on future updates and practical guides for uncertain times. Hit that subscribe button now. Watch as it lights up on your screen. By subscribing, you'll join a growing community focused on resilience, knowledge, and smart action. Tap the bell so you never miss a step on the path to preparedness. Stay informed, stay ready, and remember, your strongest asset is knowledge. Subscribe today. In the end, the greatest defense against the uncertainties of our time is not a fortress of concrete, but a fortress of the mind. It is the power of knowledge. Understanding how a major crisis unfolds, from the quiet initial tremors to the first chaotic 72 hours, demystifies the experience. It replaces the paralysis of fear with a clear-eyed awareness of what to expect. Knowing that fuel prices will likely surge and panic buying will begin allows you to prepare calmly and ahead of time, avoiding the frantic rush. Recognizing that the information you see online will be confusing and contradictory helps you to resist the digital fog and seek out more reliable sources. This knowledge empowers you to take small, meaningful actions today that can make a profound difference tomorrow. Storing a few extra gallons of water is a simple task. Assembling a basic kit of non-perishable food, a first aid kit, and a radio takes only an afternoon. Setting aside a small amount of cash requires only a little discipline. These are not extreme measures. They are sensible, logical steps based on a clear understanding of potential vulnerabilities. They are the physical embodiment of foresight. Each small preparation is a vote of confidence in your own ability to weather a storm. It is an act of taking control in a world that feels increasingly out of control. Most importantly, this journey of preparedness leads you back to the most fundamental human strength community. The knowledge that your neighbours are your greatest allies in a crisis encourages you to step outside your door, to say hello, to build the bonds of trust that are the true bedrock of a resilient society. A modern crisis, for all its technological complexity, ultimately reveals an ancient truth. We survive together. Our individual strengths are magnified when they're shared. Our collective ability to solve problems, to innovate, and to support one another is our ultimate insurance policy against the unknown. So do not be overwhelmed by the headlines or paralyzed by the scale of the challenges we face. Instead, be informed. Use this understanding to act. Start small. Fill a few bottles with water. Talk to your neighbor. Make a simple plan. In a world of complex and interconnected threats, the power to protect yourself and your family begins with the simple decision to know more and to do something, however small. Information is your map, and calm, deliberate action is your compass. Together, they are your first and most powerful line of defense.